So let us continue with the levels that are present in the drama genre. You have the text level, which includes the dialogue, people talking. The monologue is when one person talks. Usually it means to talk to the audience, although that actor may not be facing the audience directly. And also you have the plot, which is similar to the plot that you have in the prose fiction, and also the setting of the that is described in the text of the drama, and also the stage direction, which is very similar to what you would have in the film script. Stage directions usually goes like this. The action, for example, it describes the setting, it requires a window, the lighting is dark, and also there is a television that is on, for example. That is all written in the text of the play, so that the directors, if they want to make the text into a drama performance, they will have clues on what to happen. So there is a door on the middle, for example. And those are the directions that are written in the text of the play. And there's the transformation levels, which includes directing, which is the process of what the director does to create a performance. And then there's the stage, where all the action happens. And now the props that I have explained before. And there's the lighting, which also I have explained before. And there is a performance level, which deals mostly with actors and what methods are available for actors to act on the stage, facial expressions, the gestures, and the language of these actors. So let us continue with the textual level. There is the monologue, there is a dialogue, and there is what we call the aside. The aside happens when the actors talks directly to the audience from the stage to explain to the audience what happens. So it's almost like a narration in the prose fiction, or if you like to watch the cinetrons, like there's a voices from the heart that happens. So another important concept to know is the unities of time, action, and place. So in drama, aside from the English drama, these three elements must work together. The action of the character, it happens within the same time as the duration of a play, and at the same place, which means the same scene or scenery. So this, for example, it is something like this. So the actors are the scene is in the morning, and the whole action of the drama is expected to be finished, for example, in 3 hours. So the time described in the text has to be the action must have be finished by that 3 hours time. So it from the morning to the noon. So to say from 8 o'clock to around 11 or 12. So there is nothing in the text that says, for example, if you from Act 1 it happens in the morning and then Act 2 happens in the night. You cannot do that. It has to start and finish in a linear fashion. The time the time that the action happens is the same as the duration of the play, and it happens in one place, in the same scene, in scenery. So if you start with these the settings at a home, for example, in the morning, it should end also at the home, or let's be very specific, in the living room, for example. It also it starts in the living room, ends in the living room. It starts in the morning plus 3 hours, then it ends in the noon or in the midday. So that it is unified. You cannot have something like in the first act, first part of the play, it happens in the morning, and then the second part it happens in the night. You cannot do that. is not unified by time. Yes, in the first part you have the setting is a train station, for example, and then in the second part you have the setting at home. You also cannot do that. So this is a classic setting of drama, that it has to have these three unities of time, action, and place. It uses a linear plot. However, this is not generally followed by English plays, but it's important for us to know about it. And let us talk about the structure and division of the play. So you have what we call the act, which usually changes with the progression of the story or plot. In the prose fiction, you have the introduction, and then the conflict, and then the climax, and then the resolution or denouement. That is also the basic setting of the four-act Elizabethan plays. So you have the introduction, you have the conflict, and then the first act is introduction, the second act is the conflict, and then the third act is the climax, and then the resolutions happened in the fourth act in Elizabethan plays. In the classic, they have more acts, so they want to have a longer introduction, I think it was, or they want to have longer climax, I think. But the more modern plays usually have like three acts only: introduction, conflict, and climax, that is, and then resolution. Or they might want to put the climax in the end and directly with resolution. So while you have the act, you also have scenes, which means the change of settings or scenery. So you have the word scene there. It usually is divided into that. Also, it can be a change of the general, what you call that, the general mood or the general characters that are involved in that particular scene. For example, the first scene is a boyfriend and a girlfriend in the living room, for example. The second scene can happen with not with these two characters, but the parents, for example. But the scenery, the setting is the same. It can also happen like that. But usually when you change the scenery, you change the scene. In absurd or experimental plays, however, we don't find a traditional structure or coherent plot. For example, it can start with the conflict and ends with the climax, and there is no resolution. It is therefore can be very illogical, complex, and absurd situations, and it creates for because the name is obviously absurd and experimental. You're not supposed to focus on the story, but you're supposed to focus on what kind of idea that the play is trying to convey. For example, an example is the Waiting for Godot. It's a very, what you call that, a very famous one. In that although the character of Godot is actually mentioned there, you will never see him, and you will never see him on stage. Yeah, it's about other characters waiting for Godot, and as the title suggests, no, Godot did not come, and that's it. So it wants to talk about a very specific idea of waiting and expectations and stuff like that. And the non-textual elements are as important as textual. So the dialogues are important, but also you have to look at the lighting, for example, how it changes, how the lighting highlights one person. For example, there are 4 characters on the stage, A, B, C, D, let's say, and then the lighting was normal, so you can see A, B, C, D very clearly on the stage, and suddenly the lighting changes and you can only see character C, while the others were left in darkness, for example. So that makes a different meaning in the absurd and experimental plays, and you're expected to think more uh, more carefully. You have to think deeper than just taking the performance as it is. You have to find your own meaning, so to say, when you're watching this kind of drama. So it can be very complex, yes. And for example, the settings can be very bare, so the clothing they wear can be very normal, so they don't wear costumes, for example, or the costumes that they wear is very strange, for example. So it tries to make a statement with those elements, and these elements therefore become as important as the textual elements, the ones that they're talking about, their dialogues. It is more philosophical and focused on its message rather than traditional performance of a play. Now let us talk to the transformation level. Directing is very important. The director, in Indonesian we call that sutradara, is responsible for the entire artistic coordination that guides the text into performance. The first thing that a director has to do is choose the script or text, because there can be more than one version of a play. Example, the Shakespeare plays, some of his pieces have 2, 3, even more versions. And all of them can be as authoritative, that is to say, as accepted to be written by Shakespeare as the other. So if you look at Shakespearean plays, there are more ways than to direct them, because they have variations in their text. One of the example is that the speech of these characters are written in archaic or old style English, and the change of a certain stress or the change of the meaning of this old words, for example, the word pimp, P-I-M-P. This word right now is a so-called negative word, because it means like the person who employs the prostitutes on the street. So like the manager of those prostitutes. Basically, this person rents out women or prostitutes. Yeah. So when people, when the Johns or the people the customers of those prostitutes pay money to the prostitutes did not keep them for herself most of the time. She would give it to the pimp, the quote unquote their superior. Pimp right now means that. However, in the Shakespearean period, pimp means fishmonger, people who sell fish. So therefore it creates a lot of different interpretation, and how certain words are stressed, how certain words are said, how certain words or remarks have to be said. The stage directions is also different in those different versions of Shakespearean play. A character can seem very sad in one version, but in the other, that character can seem very afraid, which is quite similar. Sad and afraid, they're more like negative emotions, so to say. However, in other version, the words are different, so that you can still feel that character who are sad and afraid in other version, that character can be brave in another version. So the director must choose the script of the text and working out a general concept or direction. So in the end, it's the director that says, no, I want that character to be sad, or no, I want him to be brave. In the end, it is the decision of the director, not the author, especially when the author is not around, like Shakespeare. And in the terms of the actors, it is the time for the transformation level is to choose the kinds of actors and actresses. Romeo and Juliet, yes, You probably very famous. You probably know a thing or two about Romeo and Juliet, a Shakespearean play. You'd probably consider to choose a handsome teenage boy for Romeo. However, because and Juliet. However, because you don't want to sound very politically incorrect by having 11 years old or 13 years old starting to date on the stage, because the stage direction for this is not very clear. Do you want to use somebody who's 14 years old, which is below the acceptable age for what you call that, love or romantic relationship? Or do you want to use somebody who is like 11? Or do you want to use somebody who's 18? Or do you want to use somebody who's 21? Or perhaps you want to go with 50 years old because you want to have certain message. So casting, the choosing of actors and actresses goes beyond just choosing the suitable one. You have to think about other factors. And also the stage, adapting the stage. For example, the stage calls for a forest. What kind of forest? It is a bamboo forest? Is it a dark forest, like in Europe? Or do you want jungles, like in Africa? Your choice. This is the transformation level. What kind of props used? What should the actors and actresses use in certain events in the play? How about the costumes and makeup? Of course, there's also the consideration of the costs. Yes, if the play is in the 17th, 18th century mansion with a lot of rich people and nobles, you will have a lot of money involved to get those costumes. So directing itself is a more modern role. It started in the 19th century, in the 1800s, and probably the most important figure in directing is Konstantin Stanislavski in 1863-1938 from Eastern Europe, and it is then developed by Lee Strasberg, which created the method acting. So the method acting conveys an individual impression with the interpretive accentuation of a production, also related to the trends of time. So the acting is obviously a very individual impression, yes, and it has to work well between the directors, what he wants, and then the actors to actually create this impression. And it's not just, for example, you have the character who is angry. How is he angry? Is he just shouting? Or is he using a prop, destroying glasses? Or throwing away his handphones? Or what? So there is interpretive accentuation of a production done by the director and conveyed by the actors, which must also relate to the trends of the time. Like I said, if you want a more historically correct performance of Romeo and Juliet, you will have somebody who is 14 or 15 years old dating on the stage. Is that acceptable? Is your audience going to like it? Because, people might not like it. So how would you adapt that? That is about directing. I'll talk more about the method acting later in the next level. So for example here, the Shakespeare, The Merchant of Venice, which involves a Jewish person who is trying to extract money from the protagonist, written by Shakespeare in the 1600s. It is acceptable in Shakespeare time to have the Jew, a Jewish person, as the antagonist. However, after World War II, it might not be very good if you put that theme up in the modern stage. You have to change it a bit. And also another piece by Shakespeare, which is Othello, which starts Othello. That's the name of the protagonist. Othello is a black or African person in the city of in Italy, and he was freed from he was a former slave who is now an officer in Italy, and he was released from the slavery of the Muslims, and now he becomes the champion, so to say, of Christianity. Now, if you put that on stage, for example, in Indonesia, you have to be very careful what to do and what not to do. Of course, post 9/11, after the terrorist attack, you also have to be careful about the depiction of Muslims, or Othello, who is, we can say he is a person who used to be a Muslim but now became Christian. So the directing level here is not to be confused with stage direction on the text level. So in the text you might find, this is the example of a stage direction. In this case, the play at hand is The Death of the Salesman by Arthur Miller. So you see in Act 1, a melody is heard, played upon the flute. It is small and fine, telling of grass and trees and horizon. The curtain rises. Before us is the salesman's house. We are aware of the towering, angular shapes behind it, surrounding it on all sides. So this is actually written on the text of the play, and it is written by the author and meant as clues to the director. If he wants to create this into a performance, this is what the director should do. However, this is not the transformational level of the drama that we are talking about now. This is still on the textual level, because it is written as a text from the author. The transformational level happens when the directors start directing and start to transform the text into later performance. That is a stage direction written on the script, written on the text. This is not the performance level. The performance level is all those artistic considerations that happens from the decision, from the art direction or coordination of the director, not the ones that are written on this text. You may follow it, you may not follow it, depends on the director's decision. Okay, I think that's all for this. We'll continue with the next video on the spatial dimension, which is the stage. Thank you.